Hello and welcome back to the No Ratings podcast. It's that time. It's the insight again. Transfers are going left, right, and centre. So I've dragged Pythag out again and gone, we need to have another conversation. Omar Marmoush is set to go to Man City, and we'll tell you how he fits into this Man City team. Pythag is with me. Very quickly, initial thoughts on this deal.
Bit surprised. I I feel like I'm not sure if attacking midfield is their problem. I'm not really sure what they're trying to systematically do with this type of signing. Got no issues about him from a talent perspective, but I also don't really see him as, say, a direct replacement long term for De Bruyne. It's quite a different style of approach to the attacking midfield role. He's more of a runner with the ball,
Mm.
whereas De Bruyne is more of a, yeah, he can drive with the ball here and there, but he's more about getting out wide and getting the crosses. And it's all about the pass IQ and the high end decision making. I feel like with Marmoush, he's more of a sort of like a baller, a bit like a, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, like an Ado Turat, like someone
Mm.
very techie, very sort of Arab in his style of play, if that makes sense. It's very different, I'd say, to a classic European style playmaker in a De Bruyne.
I'm with you on this. I think the City plan should have been to replace De Bruyne, but I do also think this might be time where Foden actually ends up playing 30 plus games a season in place of De Bruyne. I think also he was on the radar for Liverpool as potentially playing right wing. I've looked at his stats. He only played right wing once last season in his career. It's about 1/7 of the time he's played football has been on the right hand side. So he is very much so a guy who plays down the middle. Um, let's talk first tactically how we'll fit in, and then talk about his weaknesses and how maybe that'll work out for City. You just mentioned he probably doesn't take De Bruyne's spot. The spot that I think he probably takes is Julian Alvarez, second striker type role potentially. But where do you think his strengths will take him in the City team?
Quite similar to what you said, really. The
Mm.
only slight difference, I'd say, is in his approach to that role. So what I was thinking was, if City were to return to, say, a 3-2-4-1 type of setup, where, let's just say, Savinho is being used on the left side, and then you can have Doku on the right side. You could have De Bruyne as your inside right, or a Foden inside right, cutting onto his left, and you could have Marmoush as an inside left, because from an inside left or a left midfield position, he's much more natural because
Mm.
he glides with his right foot and then he cuts in. He's very good at cutting in. So that sort of area of the pitch, and then getting in beyond a Haaland from that position, as well as feeding a Haaland from that position, I think that could actually work. So tactically, that would make sense. So if that's what Pep's vision is, I'm like, yeah, I can get on board with that. So that's where I would play him in a 3-2-4-1 as the second 10. That could work for me.
Do you then worry about a potential knock-on effect for Grealish, Doku, Savinho? Obviously, you said would probably get in the team. Potentially Foden, Bernardo. Potentially, there's 4 or 5 names there that he might be taking a long-term place of. He's 25 years old as well, and I think they've bought him at the perfect time. By the way, like it seems like he's hitting the ground running now. Bundesliga tax though. Let's not forget Bundesliga tax. What do you think this means for the other guys?
So from a Grealish perspective, if it is like a 4-2-3-1, or he's playing him as a left winger to get him into the side, Grealish's days are numbered then,
Mm.
because Marmoush is a very similar style player to Grealish in terms of um, carries the ball often, play makes, it kind of likes coming in from the left. So those two could be pretty incompatible. So I find it hard to see how them two could work together in the same team. Bernardo Silva is someone who, you know, I'm not sure if he's the same player he was in terms of his hunger. He turns up in certain games, then he disappears for large spells.
Mm.
I feel like there needs to be a refresh anyway in terms of the like there needs to be a young player there with new levels of desire and dynamism. So
He's also like been linked to leaving the club probably the last 2 or 3
every
summers.
summer he seems to be about to
Yeah.
leave, to be fair. But then again, like I've said, Bernardo Silva, Foden, they're more like, if I'm trying to split the pitch in half, I see them more as like from the right side of the pitch.
Mm.
And I put De Bruyne down there as well. Whereas I see Marmoush as the one of the players down the left side of the pitch. So that's why I don't think he directly interferes with their futures necessarily. But I do think some of their futures are up for grabs anyway, going into the next few seasons.
What I think is interesting is obviously City are now splashing money on various youngsters, so they're obviously having a rebuild and doing it at a very aggressive pace. But I do think this season, although they've got Haaland, we've spoken about this a few times. One, there's not enough quality played into him, and two, they don't have someone else to lean on. And I know Alvarez was a little bit scatty at times, but he was a goal scorer, he was a goal provider, he's a busy forward, and that's where I put Omar Marmoush. By the way, I put him in that busy forward category. I think people might expect him to hit the ground running, hit 20 goals. I think you might get like a better version of like a Darwin Nunes out of him. A very busy centre forward, wants to get involved in the game, wants to take shots on goal, wants to be a bit greedy. That then leads me a little bit into like his potential weaknesses in this City team, and also why him and Pep may not work. Because Pep, as we know, has turned Grealish into a boring winger. Um, I worry a little bit about that. I don't know if you feel the same
I
way.
feel the same way. Like Marmoush is, I feel like he's a bit of a maverick in the way that he naturally approaches the game. He's a bit of a technician, flamboyant. I'd say he's that type of player. I also think his decision making isn't always like very precise. It can be quite scattergun because he's one of those. Like he's trying new things. He's always just sort of doing
Mm,
things outside the box. My slight worry is what is the speed here of this City overhaul, and what are the ceilings of these new players like Kusanov, and like how tested are these players in European football, like in terms of the business end of the Champions League. It seems to be big money is being spent here on players that are relatively untested at the highest level. So I'm slightly worried with this City rebuild here, because it's good that they're trying to rebuild. I think that's a positive, but are the players? Is this the same level of players? For example, when City first brought through Aguero, David Silva, Yaya Toure, Vincent Company, these were players that we used to look at at Football Manager and be like, bloody hell, like
yeah.
these guys got such a high ceiling, and they proved to be right. And then you brought in like the next wave of players like your John Stones, your De Bruyne's. I don't know if I see these players as that same level of potential, and it'd be interesting because obviously I don't think Pep is gonna. There's question marks as to whether he's gonna be the same level of manager going forward. There's a lot of issues going on at home with his wife and divorce and all of that sort of stuff. We don't know how long he's gonna be staying there in that role. So there's a lot of question marks still here with City. I think this type of signing could be good in terms of the short term, in terms of
Mm.
injecting a little momentum, possibly even to the point where they can win the league this season. But my worry is when the other players leave, like your Walkers and all these players end up leaving, and Pep ends up leaving, are these new players going to be stranded in this project that isn't really going to last the distance going forwards?
I want to come back to a point you just made about the league. Me and you have spoken about this quite a lot, and this is where I think the Omar Marmoush conversation is really important. I don't personally think Liverpool will win the league. I also don't think Arsenal win the league. So by the law of averages, one of these two teams has to win it unless City have a charge. I think City are 11 points behind. Liverpool have a game in hand, so you could no, I think it's 8 points. Liverpool have a game in hand, could be 11. Something around that. I don't even look at the table that often. I'm not one of these people that watches the table frequently because I don't think it's that important at this stage of the season. Um, and you said he could help them chase down a Premier League title. Are you saying that from a perspective of because he could potentially fit in and and this is here's what I think, and you can tell me what you think. I think because City are a mess, sometimes like the guy who's perfect to get you out of the mess is someone who's not been in it, and someone who is like this maverick who just says like, just give me the ball. Like I'm just gonna do random things that you can't man mark it out of me because I'm just gonna bend it into the top corner from 25 yards out. Why do you think he could potentially pull City in this title race again?
So for me, I've been watching City all season, and their main issue has been out of possession. I don't think this signing fixes them at all out of position, out of possession. But what I have liked from them is some of their patterns of play on the ball. So for me, the way I'm looking at it is, can City generate momentum by basically saying, F it? Like, we aren't able to defend. Okay, they've brought in Kusanov. That might slightly upgrade them a bit from a defensive point of view, but we're going to concede goals. But let's just go out there every game and let's just outscore the opposition. And the way I see is, if they go with that 3-2-4-1, like I've mentioned, it's an electrifying attack, because if you've got Doku as a right wing back, if you've got Savino playing left wing back, and then you have a Marmoush and a mixture of Foden, Silva, De Bruyne feeding in a Haaland if he ends up picking up form, that's a devastating attack for Premier League level. I think based on Champions League, I think the team's too imbalanced, and it will get caught on the counter attack in the big games. I think, but in the Premier League, just focusing on week after week, let's just try and score 2 to 3 goals. And when the big games come, they come. But let's just smash all the smaller teams. And I think because of that, and the fact that I think Liverpool, I'm not sure if they're going to be consistent enough to just steamroll the second half of the season. Arsenal, I think, are going to be that sort of team where they're going to keep choking in certain games and against a low block and stuff. So I think these two teams are going to continue to drop points, and I think this opens a window here for City to really just go full throttle and just end on a high. And I think Marmoush, like you mentioned, because it's a new player coming in, new energy, I think that will slightly energize all the teammates around him. I think De Bruyne has picked up form. I think he's doing
Mm.
really well as well. So I think if those two in tandem can really sort of be the creative fulcrum for this City team, and if Savinho can really stretch out wide and trouble fullbacks out wide, I think there's something there for City. Even though defensively, I don't rate them at all.
Yeah, I think also, you know me, psychology every time. I also think psychologically, I don't think we've ever seen Pep in this environment or this situation where he desperately just will throw someone in. If you think about Grealish, think about every player he's had, bar maybe Rodri, I want to say, he doesn't just throw them in the deep end. He brings them into the team, bleeds them into the team, waits for them to find momentum. I think this is a scenario where he didn't really have a choice. Like Foden's not hitting the heights that he has been. Bernardo's not been at the level this season. De Bruyne, I agree with you, he's improved, but he's physically spent. He is really struggling physically, and Haaland needs someone around him. I don't think Haaland's tired. He just looks frustrated in every game, and I think sometimes you have sort of like this electrifying new player that just goes, "Let me just do things." It reminds me of Sadio Mane at Liverpool. When he came to Liverpool, he was just this one player that could just do random things at
Yeah,
any given time, and it allowed other players to go, "Oh, the weight's not on my shoulders anymore now." Like I might just try and shoot from 45 yards out. Like I might try and bend one in top corner. It allows like a freedom of expression that I think City have lost.
yeah.
And I don't know if he's going to land and it's going to happen straight away, which is the next part of the conversation I was going to ask you is this Bundesliga thing. How much do you believe in this Bundesliga tax stroke curse?
It's a difficult one with Bundesliga tax. I think it comes down to individual players because if you look at guys like Jude Bellingham, they've gone to La Liga, instant success. You look at
Mm,
Haaland coming to City, instant success. So, 11, I feel like it just comes down to the class of the player. Like, if it's a bona fide world class top talent, then they will thrive whatever league they go into. I think where there's been a Bundesliga tax is when we pick players from that league who are physically not that impressive, and then when they go to the English league, they get caught out. So, for example, players like Sancho, Shinji Kagawa, these type of players, they're not physically that impressive. So, and then when they come to the English league, they're not able to play their pass and move football, and they get caught out. And plus, they both went to Manchester United, which is, I think,
mm,
it's the worst club to go. I mean, I'm a United fan, but it's the worst club to go to if you're a footballer of any intelligence,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like even looking at United yesterday, I mean, I don't even go into that, but it was shocking, absolutely shocking. Amad Diallo is the only one who was like showing a bit of football brain in that game. Anyway, moving it back to here. So I think he's quite an athletic boy. He's quite explosive. So I don't think from an athletic point of view, I don't see why there would be a huge trouble for him to adapt to the EPL. And I think City are one of the easier teams to move into in terms of they're going to keep the ball. They're going to be dominant territory wise. So he's going to get fed the ball a lot. He's going to get touches. He's going to have players who are he's able to pop and move the ball around to. So I don't think it'll be as drastic an adaptation to what a Kagawa would have faced going into a United.
My only ever so slight concern is he goes from a Frankfurt team where he's the star boy, to a City team where he's just a part of a bigger cog.
Yeah. No, I mean, in the long term, that could be an issue. But I think in the short term, just for this 6 month stint, just towards the end of the season, I think the main thing is can you physically adapt to the league, and I think
Mm,
physically he can adapt to the league. And like you said, because City have been so bad, they've got no choice but to just throw him
just
in. So
chuck him in.
so Pep can't do that usual thing where it's like, oh, you've picked up the ball 5 meters from the left where I wanted you to the right, like like being super precise with. He's got no choice here because he's got to be a bit flexible because his team's not doing what he wants them
Mm.
to do anyway. So he's got to
Also, I don't
adapt.
know Don't know if you agree, but I think Pep this season hasn't been that precise as
Oh
well
no,
as the
defensively
season.
he's been absolutely shocking, but I mean in
Yeah,
possession he's always going to be a little bit fussy, I think.
yeah. All right. Well, let us know what you think of this Omar Marmoush signing to Man City. If you want to see more transfer-related conversation from me and Pyfag, then also let us know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Spotify, you can also comment on there as well. Subscribe and follow, like, etc., etc. We'll see you later.